I'll be seeing you soon. You shouldn't have looked into this. Now, we have a problem.
Open up.
Leave me alone.
We know you were there. Don't do this.
Quiet.
You're a police officer.
Stay silent. You don't say a word. Understand?
Help. Please. He's trying to...
The glove came down over Dana Whitlock's mouth before she could make a sound. She did not fight it. Fighting it would waste air she did not have left. Boots. Instead, she looked past the black leather, past the wrist wearing a Riverton police cuff, into the eyes of the man leaning over her hospital bed, and she held perfectly still. Boots. You should have kept your mouth shut the first time, Sergeant Cole Bratton said, and pressed down harder. The monitor beside her ticked past 91 beats a minute. Boots. She did not close her eyes. Somewhere under his palm, a small green light on the tablet mounted at her bedside kept glowing, patient, steady. The only thing in that room that had not yet noticed anything was wrong. Boots. By morning, 3 people would be under federal investigation, and 1 badge number would sit on the front page of a newspaper that Dana Whitlock would never get to read out loud, because by then her voice had already been taken from her once. Boots. But 11 days before any of that, she did not know a single second of it was coming. All she knew was a column of numbers on a gray hospital-issued printout that refused, no matter how many times she checked them, to add up. Boots. 11 days earlier, Dana sat at her desk on the 3rd floor of Cedar Bluff Regional Medical Center in Toledo, Ohio, a cup of coffee gone cold beside a stack of pharmacy dispensation logs. Boots. She was 34, the kind of unremarkable that people who are very good at unglamorous jobs are allowed to be. Boots. In 6 years as an internal compliance auditor, she had built a small, quiet reputation for finding the things other auditors let slide. Boots. The file open in front of her belonged to Harold Bellamy, 79, recovering from a hip replacement, living alone, on a strict oxycodone taper. Boots. A note in his chart read, Patient reports medication missing, wellness check requested, Sergeant C. Bratton, badge 3319, responding. Dana pulled the pharmacy delivery log to match the timeline, out of habit more than suspicion, the way she always did. Boots. The wellness check had been filed at 2:52 p.m. The pharmacy's internal delivery confirmation, the call that was supposed to be the reason anyone thought medication was missing in the first place, had gone out at 2:41 p. Boots. 11 minutes before anyone had an official reason to think anything was wrong. She read it a second time. Boots. Numbers did not lie, but the people who typed them sometimes did, and 11 minutes was the kind of gap that usually meant nothing. Boots. A miskeyed timestamp. A clerical slip. She pulled 2 more files anyway. A 74-year-old woman recovering from spinal surgery, living alone, same taper, same 11-minute gap, same badge number attached to the wellness check that arrived before the crime it was answering had officially happened. Boots. An 81-year-old stroke patient whose hand shook too badly to sign his own discharge papers. Same pattern, same badge. 3 patients. Boots. 4 months. 1 officer whose name kept arriving at the scene of a theft before the theft had been reported. Boots. Dana sat very still, the cursor blinking on an empty document. She thought about closing the file and going home. Boots. In 6 years of audits, she had never once found something that made her hands go cold while she typed. Boots. She did not close the file. She opened a new one and wrote every timestamp down in order. Pharmacy call, wellness check, badge number, patient quantity. Building a column that could not be argued with later, because some quiet, stubborn part of her already understood that someone was going to try. Boots. She was reaching for a 4th file, the one that might tell her whether the pattern had an end, when her phone buzzed with a message from hospital security. Boots. Sergeant Bratton is in the lobby asking for the Q3 pharmacy reconciliation logs. Says it's routine. In 6 years, no one outside her department had ever asked to see her work before she was finished with it. Boots. If you want to know what Dana Whitlock did next, stay with me, because in about 4 minutes, this story is going to turn into something that got a police captain arrested in his dress uniform. And it starts with her deciding, right now, whether to hand over a folder to the man whose name is written all over it. Boots. Sergeant Cole Bratton was already in the lobby when Dana came down with the printed logs still warm from the copier. And the moment he saw her, he smiled the way men in uniform sometimes smile when they want something and do not expect to be questioned about it. Boots. Ms. Whitlock. He read her badge without asking. I hear you're the one who keeps the pharmacy numbers straight. That's the job. Boots. She kept the folder against her chest, not offering it yet. Security said you'd have the Q3 reconciliation. Elder theft's been up citywide. Boots. Figured we'd compare notes, save everybody some paperwork. He held out a hand. It was a reasonable request, reasonable enough that refusing it would have felt paranoid. And paranoid was not a thing Dana allowed herself to be about numbers she had not finished checking. Boots. She handed over 3 months of dispensation logs, the same 3 months that contained Harold Bellamy, the spinal surgery patient, and the stroke victim whose hand shook too badly to sign anything. Boots. She did not hand over the incident log she had built herself, the one with the 11-minute gaps written out in her own careful hand. Boots. That one sat open upstairs on her desk, saved under a file name that meant nothing to anyone but her. Boots. Anything specific you're looking for? She asked. Just confirming a few discrepancies our end flagged. Bratton tucked the folder under his arm without opening it. Boots. You'd be surprised how often the numbers don't match what the pharmacy claims they delivered. You'd be surprised, she thought, how often they match exactly what I already found. Boots. She smiled instead. Let me know if you need anything cross-referenced. That's what I'm here for. He was already walking away. Boots. Dana did not go back to her desk. She went down to the basement, to the small, windowless office where Priya Anand ran inventory control for the outpatient pharmacy, the only person in the building who might notice, from her side of the counter, what Dana had noticed from hers. Boots. Priya looked up from a shelf of amber bottles and read Dana's face before Dana said a word. You found something. Boots. I need to ask you something, and I need you to not tell me it's nothing. That's an ominous way to start a sentence. Boots. Dana laid the timeline out on the counter. Pharmacy call, wellness check, badge number, 3 cases side by side. Boots. Priya's eyes moved down the page, slow at first, then faster. This delivery call. She tapped the middle column. This isn't something we log publicly. Boots. It's internal. It goes to the courier dispatch system, not to police, not to anybody outside the pharmacy chain. So how does an officer know a delivery is happening 11 minutes before we've told anyone medication might be missing? Boots. Priya was quiet for a moment. He doesn't. Not unless somebody here is telling him. The words landed between them and stayed there. Boots. Who has access to the courier log? Dana asked. Dispatch. Me, and... Priya stopped, pulled a schedule from a drawer, ran her finger down a column of initials and went still. Boots. TM covered all 3 of these weeks. Who's TM? Trent Malloy. He's been picking up every weekend dispatch shift since spring. Boots. Priya looked up. He's also Bratton's brother-in-law. Everybody knows it. Nobody thinks about it, because why would you? Dana felt the floor of the conversation shift under her, the way it had upstairs when she'd first lined up the timestamps. Boots. A private, cold click of things fitting together that were never supposed to fit. I'm not going to hospital administration with this. Boots. Not yet. Why not? Because Bratton just walked out of this building with 3 months of the exact logs I'm holding, and he asked for them like it was nothing. Boots. If administration is slow, or if somebody up there already knows and is looking the other way, the first thing that happens is my file disappears before anyone outside this hospital ever sees it. Boots. Priya's mouth tightened. So what do? There's a federal tip line for healthcare fraud. I've used it once before on a billing case. Boots. Dana did not say that the last time it had cost her a friendship with the coworker she had reported. Boots. She did not need to. Priya already understood what it meant to be the person who noticed. If you call them, Priya said slowly, and Bratton finds out it was you, he already has my logs. Boots. If he's careful enough to run this for 4 months without anyone catching it, he's careful enough to guess who would catch it eventually. Boots. Dana met her eyes. I'd rather he find out because a federal agent showed up asking questions than find out. I stayed quiet and let an 81-year-old man run out of pain medication he already paid for. Boots. Priya did not argue with that. She copied the shift schedule instead, wordlessly, and slid it across the counter. Her own quiet decision made in real time, the kind Dana would remember longer than she expected. Boots. That night, driving home past the hospital's east lot, Dana noticed a gray sedan parked across from her apartment building that had been idling near the hospital entrance that afternoon. Boots. She told herself it was nothing. Parking was tight in that part of Toledo. People parked wherever there was a space. Boots. She told herself the same thing the second time she saw it, an hour later, looking out her kitchen window, and it had not moved. Boots. She did not call the tip line that night. She sat at her kitchen table with her incident log open in front of her, added Trent Malloy's name to the column beside Bratton's, and typed one line at the bottom of the document before she closed her laptop. Boots. If something happens to this file, the original exists in 3 places. It was not true yet. She made it true before bed, emailing a sealed copy to an account Bratton had never heard of, and printing a second one to lock in the glove box of her car. Boots. She did not know, lying awake afterward listening for an engine that never started, that the copy in her car would be the only version left within the week. Boots. Here is the detail I need you to hold on to, because it comes back later, and it matters more than almost anything else in this story. Dana printed 3 copies. Boots. Only 2 of them survived what happened next. The tip line call took 4 minutes. Dana gave her name, her employee ID, and the 3 case numbers, and the woman on the other end read them back once, carefully, the way people read things they intend to remember. Boots. Someone will follow up within 72 hours, she said. Don't discuss this with hospital security in the meantime. Dana hung up feeling lighter than she had in a week, and heavier in a way she could not name. Boots. 2 nights later, driving home from a late shift on the 2-lane stretch of Cormorant Road that cuts through the marsh outside the city, she noticed headlights sitting too close behind her, matching her speed exactly, not passing on the empty road. Boots. She sped up. They sped up. She slowed. They slowed. She was reaching for her phone when the grill of a pickup truck filled her rearview mirror. Boots. The impact spun her sideways before her mind caught up to what had happened. The guardrail met the driver's door in a sound she would never fully remember afterward, only the sensation of it. Boots. Glass and silence. Then a taste in her mouth that was mostly copper and cold air. She did not lose consciousness. Boots. That was the detail the paramedics kept repeating to each other, impressed and unsettled in equal measure, because when they cut the door open, Dana Whitlock was awake, staring straight ahead, one hand still gripping the wheel. Boots. She could not make a sound that resembled a word. The surgeon who explained it to her 3 days later used the phrase laryngeal trauma twice before switching to plainer language. Boots. Her larynx had been crushed against the seatbelt in the impact. They had done what they could. Her voice, if it came back at all, would come back slowly, roughly, and much later than she wanted it to. Boots. Dana lay in a hospital bed that until 4 days before had belonged to strangers, whose files she had memorized with a clarity that now felt almost cruel. Boots. Someone had traded her voice for the one thing she still had left, her eyes, and a small tablet a speech therapist wheeled in on her second morning, showing her how to spell out sentences one glance at a time. Boots. I need to speak to Agent Renata Ferris, she typed slowly on the second try. Federal health fraud tip line. Boots. Case reference 3319. The nurse who read it over her shoulder went very still, then very quiet, then left the room faster than nurses usually leave rooms. Boots. If you have ever wondered what it feels like to be trapped inside your own body, while the person who did this to you walks free, keep listening, because in the next scene that person is about to be handed a badge, a radio, and permission to stand guard outside her door. Boots. Agent Renata Ferris arrived that evening. Dark suit, tired eyes, the particular calm of someone used to sitting across from frightened people. Boots. She read Dana's original incident log without speaking, then read it again. We were already looking at this file, Ferris said finally. Boots. Your tip moved it up the list. I need you to understand what that might mean about who hit you. Boots. Dana selected her next words carefully. Coincidence. Cormorant Road isn't your normal route home. You took it because a road crew closed your street that night. Boots. Ferris's jaw tightened. That's not something a stranger plans around Bratton, Dana typed. We can't prove that yet. What we can do is protect you until we can. Boots. Ferris closed the folder. You're being listed under a temporary patient code. Limited staff will know your real room number. Boots. And I'm assigning a rotating protective detail outside your door until the grand jury date is set. Something in Dana's chest loosened, briefly, dangerously, the first relief she had allowed herself since the guardrail. Boots. It lasted less than a day. She woke the next morning to the low murmur of a radio clipped to a shoulder just outside her door, and through the narrow window in the frame she saw the shape of a uniform she recognized before she saw the face. Boots. The particular set of the shoulders. The way he stood with his weight rocked back on his heels, patient, unhurried, like a man who had learned a long time ago that waiting cost him nothing. Boots. Cole Bratton turned his head, caught her watching through the glass, and smiled the same smile he had worn in the lobby 4 months and 1 wrecked car ago. Boots. Dana's hand found the tablet and typed with a speed that surprised even her. He requested this post. Ferris, reading the message from the hallway, monitor a floor away, felt the temperature of the entire case shift under her. Boots. She had assigned the rotation randomly, pulled from a list of officers cleared for hospital security work. She had not chosen Bratton. Boots. He had chosen the door himself. Notice this because it is going to matter in about 90 seconds. Ferris did not know yet that someone with a captain's signature had made sure Bratton's request landed on the approved list instead of getting flagged. Boots. That signature is the second half of this story, and it belongs to a man neither Dana nor Ferris has any reason to suspect yet. Boots. That night, the hallway outside room 314 fell quiet, in the particular way hospitals go quiet after midnight. Machines humming, footsteps rare, the world narrowed down to whatever light survives the dimmed corridor. Boots. Dana lay with the tablet's small green indicator glowing beside her, the only thing in the dark she trusted. Just past 2 in the morning, the camera mounted above her door began, almost imperceptibly, to turn. Boots. She did not notice at first. She noticed the ceiling light instead, flickering once, then dying, plunging the room into a darkness broken only by the monitor's pale glow and that single patient green light beside her bed, steady, waiting. Boots. The only witness in the building that had not blinked. The door opened without a sound. The glove closed over Dane's mouth before she had time to be afraid of it. Boots. She had imagined this moment for 2 nights without admitting to herself she was imagining it. Telling herself Ferris's guard rotation made it impossible. Boots. It was not impossible. It was Cole Bratton, leaning over her bed, his badge catching the monitor's blue light, exactly the way she had known. Somewhere beneath the part of her insisting she was being paranoid, that he eventually would. Boots. You should have kept your mouth shut the first time, he said, close enough that she could feel his breath. Boots. Dana did not close her eyes. Boots. She had spent 3 days learning to move nothing but her gaze, and she used it now. Not on him, but past his shoulder, to the small tablet mounted on its arm beside the bed, where 3 symbols sat in the corner of the screen, exactly where Ferris's technician had shown her the night before, so quietly that even the charge nurse hadn't looked up. Boots. Hold your eyes on them in order, Ferris had said. Square. Circle the bar, if you ever need it. Dana held her eyes on the square. Boots. Bratton's grip tightened. No one's going to believe a mute witness, he said, over a 16-year officer with a clean file. Boots. She moved to the circle. Something in the way her eyes shifted must have caught his attention, because he glanced toward the screen for the first time and froze, the way people freeze when they realize a room has been listening the whole time. Boots. The green light beneath the tablet had already turned red. What did you? He didn't finish. The door came open behind him hard enough to hit the wall, and Agent Ferris stepped through it with 2 federal officers a half step behind her. Boots. No firearms drawn, just a calm and total certainty that the room now belonged to them. Hands where I can see them, Sergeant Bratton. Boots. He straightened slowly, the glove still faintly damp against his palm, and for a moment he looked less like a man caught than a man doing arithmetic, counting exits, counting witnesses, counting whether there was still a version of the next 60 seconds that ended with him walking out of that hospital instead of being walked out of it. Boots. There wasn't. The second officer already had his wrists behind his back before he finished deciding. This is a mistake, Bratton said to no one in particular, in the flat voice of a man who did not believe his own sentence. Boots. 43 seconds, Ferris said, glancing at the tablet's readout. That's what reached our server before you touched the light switch cable. Boots. It's enough to arrest you. It was enough to arrest him. It was not, Ferris made clear within the hour, enough to end anything. Boots. He requested this post, she told Dana the next morning, pulling a chair close enough that Dana didn't have to strain to read her lips. Boots. But requesting a post and being approved for one are two different signatures. Someone above him signed off on assigning a named suspect to guard the witness who named him. Boots. I need to find out who before I arrest anyone else. She set a printed roster on the blanket. 4 people had authority to approve protective detail assignments for this case. Boots. Help me understand which one had a reason to put Bratton exactly where he ended up. Dana studied the 4 names. Boots. 2 meant nothing to her. The third was a lieutenant she recognized only from a community safety pamphlet taped to the hospital's front doors. Boots. The 4th name she had seen before, not in a police file, but in a folder from her own audit months earlier, attached to a hospital partnership she had flagged as unremarkable at the time and moved past. Boots. Captain Reed Ashcombe, she typed slowly. He signed the hospice partnership. Ferris's expression didn't change, but something behind it sharpened. Boots. What partnership? Harbor Light Hospice Care, Community Outreach. Cedar Bluff signed with them 8 months ago. Ashcombe's name was on the press release. Boots. Why would you remember that? Dana thought about it before answering, the way she thought about every number that didn't quite add up. Boots. Because their controlled substance intake paperwork ran through our system for 2 weeks before switching to their own private courier. Boots. I noted it and moved on. It wasn't my department. Ferris was already standing, already reaching for her phone, already moving toward the door with the particular urgency of someone who has just watched 2 unrelated facts click into a shape she does not like. Boots. Priya Anand gave you a supply schedule, she said, half to herself. I need every delivery record Harbor Light Hospice has filed with this hospital since the day that partnership started. Boots. You think the medication didn't go to street resale, Dana typed. You think it went through them. I think, Ferris said, pausing at the door, that a captain who approves protective details doesn't usually also sign hospice partnerships, unless he's the one making sure both sides of an operation never have to talk to strangers to move product. Boots. She left before Dana could type another question, and for a long moment the room held nothing but the quiet hum of machines and the tablet's screen, still glowing faintly, the transmission light gone from red back to green. Boots. It was almost an hour before Ferris returned. When she did, she set a single printed page on the blanket without a word. Boots. Dana looked down at the approval signature at the bottom of Bratton's protective detail assignment. The same signature, she realized with a slow, cold certainty, that sat beneath the hospice partnership in her own months-old audit file. Boots. Captain Reed Ashcombe was still in his dress uniform when federal agents intercepted him outside the Cedar Bluff Community Partnership breakfast 3 days before Dana's scheduled testimony. Boots. Holding a folder he had not yet been told the contents of, he did not ask what it was. He asked who had sent it. Boots. Ferris didn't answer. She simply told him he would understand soon enough. This is the part where most stories about corrupt cops end. A man in a dress uniform, hands behind his back, a headline the next morning. Boots. But if that were the whole ending, you would already know exactly how this feels, and you wouldn't still be listening. Boots. What happened in that courtroom 2 weeks later is the part nobody expected, including Ashcombe. The room was smaller than Dana had expected. Boots. No judge, no defense table, no opposing attorney waiting to challenge her testimony. Only the prosecutor, the court reporter, and the jurors who would decide whether the evidence was enough to move forward. Boots. Dana sat with the tablet propped in front of her, the small speaker beside her hand, the only voice the room would hear from her that morning. Boots. The prosecutor, a woman named Alvarez, calm and unhurried, walked her through the timeline, one document at a time. Boots. Whitlock, tell the jury what you found in the pharmacy logs. Dana's eyes moved across the screen. The electronic voice that followed was flat and unhurried. Boots. 3 patients. Same medication taper. Same 11-minute gap between a private delivery call and an official wellness check that claimed to be responding to it. Boots. Alvarez entered the delivery schedule next, then the hospice partnership contract, then the protective detail authorization. Ashcombe's signature sitting beneath Bratton's name, filed 9 days before Dana's crash. Boots. Never flagged for conflict of interest, because the man who should have flagged it had signed it himself. Ask the jury to look at the 2 signatures Dana typed. Boots. Same name, same week, same office. Alvarez placed the internal memo on the projector next. dated 2 weeks before the assignment, routed directly to Ashcomb's office, naming Bratton a person of interest before he was ever given Dana's door to guard. Boots. She didn't need to say anything further. The document said it for her. Bratton testified that afternoon, brought before the same grand jury under an agreement his attorney had negotiated in exchange for his cooperation. Boots. They told me the assignment would look routine, he said. Said nobody reviews protective detail rosters that closely. It was not loyalty that made him say it. Boots. It was the plain, tired mouth of a man who finally understood, sitting in that room, that Ashcombe had built the whole operation to survive exactly this moment, disposable men at every level except his own. Boots. The grand jury returned an indictment within the hour. Ashcombe was arrested the following morning in the parking lot outside Riverton Police Headquarters, before his shift began. Boots. There was no audience, no dramatic exit past reporters, just 2 federal agents, a set of handcuffs, and a captain who had spent 4 months believing paperwork could outrun timestamps. Boots. Here is the part I promised you at the start of this story, the part where Ashcombe finally has to say something out loud, and for the first time in his career, no title in front of his name can protect him from what comes out of his own mouth. Boots. At his sentencing hearing 8 weeks later, Ashcombe was given the chance to speak before the judge passed sentence. He stood in a gray suit that no longer had a badge pinned to it, and for the first 11 seconds he said nothing at all. Boots. The court reporter would later note it in the transcript as a pause, but everyone in that room understood it was something closer to a man realizing in real time that the version of events he had rehearsed for 4 months no longer had anywhere left to go. Boots. I built a system to protect vulnerable patients, he said finally, and his voice cracked on the word vulnerable in a way that made even the bailiff look up. Boots. Everything I did, I told myself it was contained, controlled, that nobody who mattered would get hurt. He stopped. He looked for one long moment directly at Dana Whitlock, sitting in the 3rd row with a tablet on her lap and a scar at the base of her throat that would never fully fade. Boots. I did not think a compliance auditor would be the one who mattered. That sentence, not the arrest, not the indictment, not the 4 months of evidence, was the moment the room went completely silent. Boots. No papers shuffling, no coughing, just the low hum of the courtroom's ventilation system, and Ashcombe, standing there with the full weight of what he had just admitted, settling over his own shoulders for the first time. Boots. He had not called her collateral damage. He had called her someone who mattered, as though that fact had genuinely never occurred to him until a jury forced him to sit across from the consequence of it. Boots. The judge sentenced him to 11 years, with a formal finding that his abuse of a position of public trust had directly enabled the trafficking of controlled substances from vulnerable elderly patients across 4 separate facilities in Lucas County. Boots. Trent Malloy received 18 months and full cooperation credit. Boots. Bratton, whose testimony had built the case against his captain, received 7 years and a permanent revocation of his certification. The judge noting, without sympathy, that cooperation after the fact does not erase what a man chooses to do with his own 2 hands in a hospital room at 2 in the morning. Boots. Dana did not watch Ashcombe get led out of the courtroom. Boots. She heard about it from Ferris over the phone, and then she went back to what she had been doing that morning. Sitting across from Harold Bellamy at his kitchen table, walking him through the restitution paperwork that would restore the medication access his file had once falsely claimed he had stolen from himself. Boots. 6 months later, on a warm morning in Cedar Bluff's courtyard, Dana stood at a small podium for the opening of the hospital's new patient advocacy office, a room built with restitution funds, its sole purpose catching exactly the pattern she had once caught alone, at a gray desk with a cold cup of coffee. Boots. Priya stood near the door. Ferris had flown in for the morning. Harold Bellamy sat in the front row, his cane resting against his knee, listening the way he once listened to Dana, read his own case file back to him. Boots. Dana's voice when it came was still rough, slower than it used to be, imperfect in a way that would likely never fully heal. Boots. But it was hers, and it reached the back row without any device. They thought a woman who couldn't speak had nothing left to say, she told the small crowd. Boots. I just needed someone willing to listen to the numbers instead. If this story stayed with you, not because of how it ended, but because somewhere in the middle you found yourself hoping someone would notice the numbers the way Dana did, Take a moment to like this video so it reaches someone who needs to hear it. Boots. Share it with anyone who has ever been told that staying quiet was the safer choice. And tell me in the comments, if you were the one sitting at that gray desk with the numbers that didn't add up, would you have made the call as early as she did, or would you have told yourself it was nothing? Boots. I read every answer. This story is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people, departments, or institutions. Boots. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration.